Hi guys, this is Romeo from the Romeo Bocal Coach to Farm. This will be a long video. Okay, hold on. I'm testing out something new that I'm going to combine light of all the topics into one video instead of making them one by one. So, okay, let's go. This one is about the Supreme Court, about the vaccine. I don't know what happened when they put this out. So you got like things happen when they put out things a lot. So that's me, and because for me, I like to see and hear what the topic is. I don't know what website this. I have the website for this or links. Links I got put in the description. Okay. Okay.
Washington, AP. The Supreme Court has stopped the Biden administration from enforcing a requirement that employees at large businesses be vaccinated against COVID-19, undergo weekly testing, and wear a mask on the job. Microsoft Start. Search the web. 59 feedback. Copyright 2022 Microsoft Privacy and Cookies Terms of Use advertised. Copyright provided by Associated Press File. This artist sketch depicts lawyer Scott Keller standing to argue on behalf of more than 24 business groups seeking an immediate order from the Supreme Court to halt a Biden administration order to impose a vaccine or testing requirement on the nation's large employers during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the Supreme Court in Washington, January 7, 2022. The Supreme Court has stopped the Biden administration from enforcing a requirement that employees at large businesses be vaccinated against COVID-19 or undergo weekly testing and wear a mask on the job. The court's order Thursday during a spike in coronavirus cases deals a blow to the administration's efforts to boost the vaccination rate among Americans. Derek Taryn via AP file. At the same time, the court is allowing the administration to proceed with a vaccine mandate for most healthcare workers in the U.S. Improve productivity. The court's orders Thursday during a spike in coronavirus cases was a mixed bag for the administration's efforts to boost the vaccination rate among Americans. The court's conservative majority concluded the administration overstepped its authority by seeking to impose the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's routine test rule on U.S. businesses with at least 100 employees. More than 80 million people would have been affected. See feedback. Copyright 2022 Microsoft Privacy and Cookies Terms of Use advertise. Although Congress has enacted significant legislation addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, it has declined to enact any measure similar to what OSHA has promulgated here, the conservatives wrote in an unsigned opinion. In dissent, the court's three liberals argued that it was the court that was overreaching by substituting its judgments for health experts. Acting outside of its competence, and without legal basis, the court displaces the judgments of the government officials given the responsibility to respond to workplace health emergencies. Justices Stephen Breyer, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor wrote in a joint dissent. Copyright provided by Associated Press File. The Supreme Court shown Friday, January 7, 2022, in Washington. The Supreme Court has stopped the Biden administration from enforcing a requirement that employees at large businesses be vaccinated against COVID-19 or undergo weekly testing and wear a mask on the job. The court's order Thursday during a spike in coronavirus cases deals a blow to the administration's efforts to boost the vaccination rate among Americans. AP photo/Evan Vucci file. The vaccine mandate that the court will allow to be enforced nationwide covers virtually all healthcare workers of the country. More than 208 million Americans, 62.7% of the population, are fully vaccinated, and more than a third of those have received booster shots, according to the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. All 9 justices have gotten booster shots. Feedback. Copyright 2022 Microsoft Privacy and Cookies Terms of Use advertise. Yes, we're registered trademark, official site.
Yeah, that's about the vaccine mandate for us who is working finish more than one head. They said they start that part, but like if you're working in healthcare work, health field like a big one or small that has they say medical uh, assurance that funded by government, you have to get vaccine. Okay. Again, I'm not for legal purposes. I'm not a legal. I'm not a lawyer or what doctor you are about those things or doctors because I'm not a doctor and lawyer. Okay. Next is the current responsible leaders lack of views about remote work. I picked this out on 11:22 at 7:30 p.m. and the topic was posted on 7:22 and 9:01 a.m. Eastern by in Fort. Let's go.
January 11, 2022, 7:37 p.m. Omicron has exposed CEO's lack of vision about remote work. High fortune. Equals fortune. Search, sign, and subscribe now. Most popular THS World Health Organization just issued a dire COVID prediction. Paid content how to unlock the hidden potential of your data from Oz. Commentary, the future of work. Omicron has exposed corporate leaders' lack of vision about remote work. By Glitzipersky. January 7th, 2022, 9:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Delta illustrated the high likelihood of additional dangerous variants, yet the leadership at many of our biggest companies deny the benefits risk GLPH than or less than. KVN and WTHPD are broad in the whirlwind. Opt-out case of...
I don't know what happened. I should actually that.
Leaders are sticking their heads into the sand and ignoring reality on Omicron. Unless they take needed steps, the results may be catastrophic for their companies. Paid content. Meet the Echopreneurs. From Salesforce Plus. Omicron took over from Delta as the dominant COVID variant in the U.S. in late December. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned that Omicron's higher infectivity and ability to escape vaccines will overwhelm many hospitals over the course of January. Unfortunately, most companies are not pivoting effectively to meet Omicron. From the start of the pandemic, many leaders have insisted on a return to a normal office-centric culture. That's despite the fact that a large majority of employees express a strong desire for a flexible hybrid or fully remote schedule. Thus, in response to Omicron, companies like Google, Uber, and Ford have been bringing out the same old delay the office reopening play that they used with Delta. Regardless of plenty of warnings from future-proofing and cognitive bias experts, leaders are showing no intention of making a strategic shift toward the hybrid and remote future of work. Mental blind spots. You've probably heard the quote, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." Workers never wanted a return to a normal office-centric culture, and Omicron just helps illustrate how pointless and counterproductive it is to try to turn back the clock to January 2020. Please select your preference and either accept...
Yeah, I should check everything, but hey,
What explains this puzzling leadership behavior? Leaders, like the rest of us, are prone to dangerous judgment errors called cognitive biases. Rooted in wishful thinking, these mental blind spots lead to poor strategic decisions. One of the biggest challenges relevant to a micron is the cognitive bias known as the ostrich effect. Named after the myth that ostriches stick their heads in the sand when they fear danger, the ostrich effect refers to people denying or ignoring risks. Delta illustrated the high likelihood of additional dangerous variants, yet the leadership at many of our biggest companies denied the reality of this risk. Now they are reaping the whirlwind. We want the future to be normal. We're tired of COVID and just want to get back to pre-pandemic times. Thus, we greatly underestimate the probability and impact of major disruptors, like new COVID variants. That cognitive bias is called the normalcy bias. When we learn one way of functioning in any area, we tend to stick to the way of functioning. You might have heard of this as the hammer nail syndrome. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That syndrome is called functional fixedness. This cognitive bias causes leaders who are accustomed to office-centric culture and ways of collaborating to reject any alternatives. Opt out, please select your preference accept.
I'm sorry.
Approach to how employees collaborate. Companies need to adopt a decentralized, team-led approach. Each individual team leader of a rank-and-file employee team should determine what works best for his or her team. After all, team leaders tend to know much more about what their teams need. Moreover, they can respond to local emergent situations, whether COVID cases, climate change-related disruptions, or others. Such delegation of responsibility helps develop leadership skills and makes team leaders the owners of the decision, which motivates people to do their best. At the same time, team leaders need to be trained to integrate best practices for hybrid and remote team leadership. These practices involve facilitating innovation in hybrid and remote teams through techniques such as virtual asynchronous brainstorming and serendipitous idea generation. To improve collaboration and team bonding for hybrid and remote teams, team leaders need to integrate virtual water cooler discussions, virtual co-working, and virtual mentoring. Finally, team leaders need to adjust performance evaluation to adapt to the needs of hybrid and remote teams. In short, instead of trying to turn back the clock to the lost world of January 2020, consider how we might create competitive advantage in our new future. COVID will never go away. We need to learn to live with it. That means reacting appropriately and thoughtfully to new variants and being intentional about our trade-offs. Gleb Sikorski is a thought leader in cognitive bias risk management, CEO of Future Proofing Consultancy Disaster Avoidance Experts, and the best-selling author of several books, including Returning to the Office and Leading Hybrid and Remote Teams, a manual on benchmarking to best practices for competitive advantage. Please select your preference and either
And this one is about with this whole thing COVID-19, people see the CEO and the managers don't care what they think. That's one of the pros with this thing. The lack of things in our system. Okay. Next one is I don't know what happened. This was posted on Jan 14, 2020, and yeah, I think it's about
A pedestrian walks past Harkness Gate on the Yale University campus in New Haven, Connecticut, on June 12, 2015. Craig Warner /Bloomberg via Getty Images file. January 14, 2022, 7:54 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. By Richard D. Kallenberg, Senior Fellow, the Century Foundation. The nation's top private universities have long faced an awkward dilemma. They purport to be meritocratic institutions, educating the best and brightest regardless of wealth, and yet year after year, they enroll a student population that skews wildly toward the affluent. Research from a few years ago found that Yale University had 33 times as many rich kids as poor kids. Duke University, 18 times as many, and Brown University, 17 times as many. These colleges nevertheless insist that they welcome students of all financial backgrounds, citing as evidence their need-blind admissions. These colleges nevertheless insist that they welcome students of all financial backgrounds.
Yeah, it's about college. This topic is about like things happen. Okay, this one is people thinking, hey, it's not worth going to college. Okay.
However, a new class action antitrust lawsuit filed by former students against 16 elite universities seeks to blow the lid off that claim. Under Section 568 of the Improving America's Schools Act of 1994, the plaintiffs allege universities are allowed to meet periodically and agree to use a common formula that limits financial aid for students, but only if all students are admitted on a need-blind basis, which the statute defines as without regard to the financial circumstances of the student involved or the student's family. In other words, if universities want to collude on setting financial aid, they have to agree not to discriminate on admissions based on a student's family finances. Most colleges named in the suit either declined to comment or did not respond when contacted by NBC News earlier this week. Yale, Caltech, and Brown sent statements denying any wrongdoing. The suit alleges that 16 colleges in the 568 cartel are breaking the law because many, if not all, are not truly need-blind in admissions, and indeed do discriminate in favor of wealthy applicants. In the zero-sum game of selective admissions, discriminating in favor of the advantaged, by definition, discriminates against everyone else. Privileging the wealthy and disadvantaging the financially needy are inextricably linked, the plaintiffs argued. They are two sides of the same coin. The legal complaint is filled with quotations from loose-lipped admissions officers who allegedly admit that the wealthy routinely receive favorable treatment in admissions. The complaint claimed that Dartmouth College, for example, up to 5% of the student body is admitted from a special list of students created by the Development Office. At Northwestern University, the university president personally reviews hundreds of applicants, including those associated with wealthy donors. At the University of Pennsylvania, the complaint claimed applicants from wealthy families are tagged for being a high priority for the institution. These practices are pervasive, the plaintiffs alleged. They quoted former Vanderbilt University President Lee Gordon G., who said in 2019 that any president under truth serum would admit that donor connections influence admissions decisions. And if the case moves forward, it will be fascinating to watch as leading college presidents and admissions officers are subjected to the legal system's version of a truth serum, disclosure of files and sworn testimony under oath outlining the extent of preferences provided to the wealthy. Related. Opinion. Lori Loughlin's biggest mistake? If you're going to bribe a college, do it legally. Eric Rosen, who was the lead prosecutor in the so-called Varsity Blues scandal, is among the attorneys who filed the lawsuit. Rosen noted the similarity between the two sets of cases. Varsity Blues took on the side door of admissions, Rosen said in a statement, referring to actions such as the special treatment offered to applicants by athletic coaches who were personally bribed. This case takes on the back door, in which colleges themselves favor wealthy applicants in making admissions decisions. Entry through the back door may be more genteel than through the side door, because money exchanged for special favors lines the pockets of institutions rather than individuals, but either process stinks of corruption. Recommended. Opinion. Kirsten Sinema's pro-filibuster speech was maddening. Opinion. The problem with the Biden-Cheney 2024 surprise? Ask Abraham Lincoln. Cynics might say this is all old news. The wealthy have always gotten special treatment in many walks of life, including admissions to elite colleges. But the lawsuit suggests that so long as universities violate blind admissions, they must give up their ability under Section 568 to limit financial aid offerings. The law does not allow them to do both, Rosen said. As the plaintiffs pointed out, Harvard University, for example, refused to join the 568 group because it offers more generous financial aid to students than the group's collective agreement would allow. Harvard generally provides financial aid on a sliding scale for families making up to $200,000 annually. The universities would argue that financial aid collusion helps students by getting universities to focus aid on those who need it most. If universities instead compete to recruit star students by showering them with far more aid than they actually need, the pot of money for the neediest students could be depleted. Because universities are unlikely to unilaterally disarm in the competition for students with high SAT scores, but minimal financial need, the best solution is to collectively agree on fair levels of need-based aid universities offer. But if that high-minded case for collusion is correct, universities have a ready solution. They can become truly blind and stop advantaging the wealthy. Indeed, some universities have recently begun edging in that direction on the related issue of legacy applicants. In October, Amherst College agreed to jettison legacy preferences that privilege the children of alumni, following the lead of Johns Hopkins University, which abandoned the practice in 2014. As Hopkins President Ronald J. Daniels wrote in his insightful new book, What Universities Owe Democracy, whereas social mobility is healthy for democracy, legacy preference is a mobility written as policy. Related. Opinion. We want to hear what you think. Please submit a letter to the editor. The new antitrust lawsuit correctly noted that elite universities are gatekeepers to the American dream, which provide a critical pathway to upward mobility. Indeed, Harvard's Raj Chetty and colleagues found that while top colleges admitted very few low-income students, those who did attempt did extraordinarily well after graduating. If the 568 lawsuit does indeed expose blind admissions as a charade, perhaps universities will at long last feel pressure to focus more attention on strivers who've overcome obstacles and actually deserve special attention in admission. Subscribe.
Yeah, and this topic is about the guys and going guys and about the poor and rich and how rich people can get in by the things that sucks, and poor people try to do anything by legal, and if they do something they get worse than what the rich people get. Yeah, that sucks for the. Hey, that's life for you. Yeah, that sucks. Next one. Like this one is pretty hard. That was on January 2022. Okay.
Is college even worth it? Here's how to decide. Robert Farrington, Senior Contributor 0, Personal Finance. I write about personal finance, college and student loan debt. Follow. Listen to article 7 minutes. College is expensive and everybody knows it. For many, to simply afford it, it means borrowing student loans. And people also know their student loans will have to be paid back one day. Yet students continually rack up six figures in student loans for jobs that pay $40,000 per year. Why do we do this to ourselves? It's partly because we are told our whole lives that college is the ticket out of poverty, and because many of the jobs out there are labeled as requiring a college degree. And sometimes, high school graduates just don't know what else to do. By attending college, they at least get the chance to start working towards some sort of goal. Unfortunately, some college degrees aren't worth the trouble at all, and they're definitely not worth the cost. Yet, far too many people find out their college degree is worthless when it's too late to do anything about it. Cookie references. Campus buildings and hallways of the Stanford University, USA. Stanford, USA, September 11, 2018. Getty. Should you go to college? How to decide. A recent study from the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, FREOP, laid the value proposition of various college degree programs out plain. The report, which is summarized here, shows how the return on investment, ROI, varies across almost 30,000 different bachelor's degree programs. More from Forbes Advisor. Best travel insurance companies by Amy Denies Editor. Best COVID-19 travel insurance plans by Amy Denies Editor. After carefully looking at the data, FREOP estimates that the median bachelor's degree has a net ROI of $306,000 for those who graduate on time. This means they believe these degree programs will add $306,000 to the graduate's lifetime earnings after subtracting the costs required for school. Cookie preferences. However, accounting for the risk of not graduating, the median value of a bachelor's degree drops to $129,000. When you consider the choice of all the degree programs they profiled in their study, this additional factor leads to a result where more than a quarter of bachelor's degree programs have a negative ROI. But you do have some control over whether you graduate or not, and you would only enter college if you plan to finish school. According to the study, your college major is the one factor that can help you decide if the juice is worth the squeeze. And not surprisingly, all the degree programs that don't necessarily tie into a long-term career field fall short of others that do. Some fields of study, including engineering, computer science, nursing, and economics, can produce returns of $1 million or more, writes author Preston Cooper in the summary of the study. Others, including art, music, religion, and psychology, often have a zero or even negative net financial value. In other words, earning a bachelor's degree in religious studies or art history could leave you worse off financially for life than if you hadn't even gone to college at all. Other factors to consider. How long to go to college is another major determinant of whether your degree would be worth it, and by how much. Cooper writes that 16% of programs have a negative ROI when completed in 4 years, but that the figure jumps to 21% for those who take 5 years to earn their degree. If you take 6 years to finish college, the percentage of programs with a negative ROI increases to 27%. Of course, the school you attend can also play a major role in the value of your degree program. College rankings aside, the FREOP study shows. Cookie preferences. Many for-profit colleges have a poor ROI, which is not surprising considering the high cost of private schools. In fact, private school education can cost several times what it costs to attend a public college in your state. College Board estimates show that tuition and fees at the average public four-year school worked out to $10,740 for the 2021-22 school year for in-state students. By contrast, private, non-profit four-year schools charge students an average of $38,070 per year. Where to find future salaries? If you want to research the ROI of any given degree program, you can do so here. Not only does FreeUp let you compare the ROI of various degree programs, but you can also compare programs from different schools. There are also other places to do more research of your own. Some of the best tools out there are from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, including their Occupational Outlook Handbook and their Occupational Employment and Wage Statistics homepage. Both tools make it possible to research careers you may be interested in, then to tie those careers to relevant degree programs that can help you get there. You can even look at national or regional occupational wages in one place, then filter to see which jobs pay the most. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is helpful because it lets you read more about specific careers and their average salaries with updated numbers included. For example, you can find out that computer and information systems managers earned a median annual wage of $151,150 nationally as of May 2020, but the top 25% in this career field earned more like $191,470. You can even use a page like this one to learn which industries pay computer and information systems managers the most, or which states and metropolitan areas pay them the highest salaries. Cookie preferences. The bottom line. Earning a degree in the arts may sound like a great way to spend 4 years, but this choice could easily leave you with decades of debt and few career prospects to boot. If you love drama and acting, arming yourself with this kind of information is incredibly important. After all, you can always earn a different degree and take part in shows during your free time. Plus, everyone knows you don't need a degree to be an actor. In any case, the key to knowing the difference is knowledge, and that knowledge is easier to find now than ever before. Before you invest tens of thousands of dollars into a bachelor's degree, find out how much that degree will actually cost you and what you can expect to earn once you have it. You may not like what you find, but your future self will probably thank you.
Yeah, for this one is basically thing. It's up to you. You want to go to college or no, and you have to pick a major and degree that work for you to have a good job. That people have the degrees in the field they like, but when they work in the field they quit due to that's not what they expect or what doesn't work. And be careful what you choose. You have to pick it's a good college and everything. The return you have to expect and do work, but there are some things even having college sometimes it's not worth it because you sometimes people don't know what they're doing. It says here, okay. Next topic. It is about the much during the itself, okay.
How much deference do elite U.S. colleges deserve? January 14th, 2022. Oh, by Peter Coy, Dollar Opinion Writer. I have a feeling that elite colleges and universities are going to have a hard time dealing with allegations that they have illegally colluded by coordinating their financial aid policies. It's not just a question of whether they broke the law, although the allegations in the class action lawsuit filed on Sunday appear damning. It's a broader question of whether Ivy League universities and other renowned institutions still deserve deference and freedom of action because of their contributions to society, or whether they should be scrutinized like any other self-interested institutions, such as tire manufacturers. In 1992, when elite American colleges and universities were more universally esteemed than they are today, Congress carved out a temporary exemption for them in antitrust law. It was the political aftermath of an antitrust case that the Justice Department had brought in 1991 against the 8 Ivy League universities, plus the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the so-called overlap group, which had agreed not to outbid one another for students through their financial aid packages. The exemption allows schools to coordinate their financial aid policies if they admitted all students on a need-blind basis, that is, without regard for their ability to pay. That exemption was extended and broadened in Section 568 of the Improving America's Schools Act of 1994, and it has been extended several times since. It's set to expire on September 30th. The 568 President's Group, named after the section of the 1994 law, is a consortium of schools that have need-blind admissions. Members aren't allowed to discuss individual students' financial aid packages, but by agreeing to adhere to a detailed rubric for how families' financial need is determined, they can go a long way toward eliminating aid as a recruiting tool. The group's website says, the participating institutions believe that this approach, when applied in a consistent manner, serves to diminish or eliminate the divergent results that continue to threaten the long-standing tradition of awarding aid on the basis of need. The class action lawsuit filed on Sunday argues that the 568 President's Group, which the suit calls a cartel, broke the law because some of the schools in the group, some of the time, were not fully need-blind in their admissions decisions. For example, brace yourself for a shock. The children of extremely wealthy families might have gotten a bit of an edge. The lawsuit quotes E. Gordon, a former chancellor of Vanderbilt University and a former president of Brown University, both of which are named in the suit, who said that any school president under the influence of truth serum would concede that donor connections make a difference in admissions. Columbia University, also named in the suit, openly states that admissions to its School of General Studies, although not to its other undergraduate units, are not need-blind. In addition to Columbia, Vanderbilt and Brown, the defendants of the California Institute of Technology, the University of Chicago, Cornell, Dartmouth, Duke, Emory, Georgetown, and Lieutenant, Northwestern, Notre Dame, the University of Pennsylvania, Rice, and Yale. Each has been a member of the 568 President's Group, all or part of the time since 2003. Paragraph 111 of the suit looks especially problematic for the defendants. Yale dropped out of the group in 2007, but rejoined it in 2018. In 2008, the suit says, Caesar Storlazzi, then Yale's Director of Student Financial Services, told the Yale Daily News that by leaving the 568 group, Yale was free to give families more aid than they would have gotten under the consensus methodology that group members commit to following. Storlazzi went on to say that what is not good about the 568 approach is that it has one needs analysis formula that everyone has to sign on to. In that unguarded statement to the student newspaper, Storlazzi seems to essentially say that the 568 methodology allows member schools to coordinate in a way that lets them spend less on financial aid. If that is true, it looks bad for the defendants. 3 ultra-elite schools, Harvard, Princeton, and Stanford, have never belonged to the 568 group. In that same Yale Daily News interview from 2008, Sally Donahue, who was then Harvard's Director of Financial Aid, said the 568 formula would have yielded financial aid packages that were smaller than what Harvard wanted to award. Members of the 568 President's Group are likely to argue in their defense that their coordination allows them to give more aid than they otherwise wouldn't to target the most needy students. Other organizations use similar logic. If we use limited resources to influence institutional choice among students who would attend college or enroll in a similar institution, regardless of subsidies, we will have insufficient funds to increase college access and enrollment, Sandy Baum, an economics professor at Arena at Skidmore College, said in an explainer for financial aid professionals issued by the College Board. It's so hard to get your head around this if you're an antitrust person who's used to dealing with the business world, said Sarah Flanagan, Vice President for Government Relations and Policy Development for the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. It's not necessarily the same dynamic in the higher ed marketplace. Competition has probably led to higher prices. Flanagan's organization includes most of the members of the 568 group, but she said she was not speaking on their behalf or addressing the allegations in the lawsuit.
Basically, this topic is talking about if you are in a good ship, in a what business, money, status, all those things. Basically, you can buy anything, anyone, when you donate to the school to get in, let you in, or your kids in. So, well, that's life, and they say a case about it. And again, I'm not a lawyer or know what's going on, but sucks. He wants to get a degrees, but unfair to it. Okay, let's go.
More than 1 million fewer students are in college. Here's how that impacts the economy. January 13, 2022 broke a vertical bar 502 AM Herlong Morning Edition. As a listening warning, Erotic Carmona for NPR. More than 1 million fewer students are enrolled in college now than before the pandemic began. According to new data released Thursday, U.S. colleges and universities saw a drop of nearly 500,000 undergraduate students in the fall of 2021, continuing a historic decline that began the previous fall. It's very frightening, says Doug Shapiro, who leads the research center at the National Student Clearinghouse, where the new data comes from. Far from filling the whole of 2020's enrollment declines, we are still digging it deeper. Compared with the fall of 2019, the last fall semester before the coronavirus pandemic, undergraduate enrollment has fallen a total of 6.6%. That represents the largest four-year decrease in more than 50 years, Shapiro says. Community college enrollment is down 13% since fall 2019. The nation's community colleges are continuing to feel the bulk of the decline, with a 13% enrollment drop over the course of the pandemic. But the fall 2021 numbers show that bachelor's degree-seeking students at four-year colleges are making up about half of the shrinkage in undergraduate students, a big shift from the fall of 2020, when the vast majority of the declines were among associate degree seekers. The phenomenon of students sitting out of college seems to be more widespread. It's not just the community colleges anymore, said Shapiro. That could be the beginning of a whole generation of students rethinking the value of college itself. I think if that were the case, this is much more serious than just a temporary pandemic-related disruption. Undergraduate student enrollment fell 6.6% from fall 2019. Graduate program enrollment, which saw an increase in the fall of 2020, declined slightly, down by nearly 11,000 in the fall of 2021. Overall, enrollment in undergraduate and graduate programs has been trending downward since around 2012, but the pandemic turbocharged the declines at the undergrad level. Education: fewer students are going to college. Here's why that matters. Many were hopeful that would-be undergraduates who chose to take a year off in 2020 would return in 2021, especially given the expanded opportunities for in-person learning. But the pandemic gap year appears to be a myth The National Student Clearinghouse found that of the 2020 high school graduates who chose not to enroll in college after graduation, only 2% ended up enrolling a year later, in the fall of 2021. The easiest assumption is that they're out there working, said Shapiro. Unemployment is down. The labor market is good. Wages are rising for workers in low-skilled jobs. So if you have a high school diploma, this seems like a pretty good time to be out there making some money. Wages at the bottom of the economy have increased dramatically, making minimum wage jobs especially appealing to young people as an alternative to college. In December, for example, jobs for non-managers working in leisure and hospitality paid 15% more than a year ago, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That could be the beginning of a whole generation of students rethinking the value of college itself. Doug Shapiro, National Student Clearinghouse. It's very tempting for high school graduates, but the fear is that they are trading a short-term gain for a long-term loss, Shapiro says. And the longer they stay away from college, life starts to happen and it becomes harder and harder to start thinking about yourself going back into a classroom. It's hard to give up a paycheck. For Brian Williams, who graduated from high school early in the pandemic, the long-term plan is to go to college. He postponed enrolling in 2020 because he was tired of remote learning. Instead, he got a job at a Jimmy John's sandwich store near his home in the suburbs of Houston so he could start saving up. When it was time to enroll in fall 2021 classes, he postponed again. He says he was more interested in finding a job that paid more than in giving up much of his paycheck to go to school. In August, Williams left Jimmy John's and got a job at an Amazon warehouse. His hourly earnings jumped up by $4.50. I feel more secure within the money I'm getting, he says. To get to and from his new job, he bought a car, which he's working to pay off. The coronavirus crisis losing a generation, fall college enrollment plummets for first-year students. For Williams, enrolling in college means he'll have to cut back on hours and earn less money, while also spending more money to pay for classes. It's so hard, he says. I'm just like, wow, if I go to school, I'm going to take time off, and I'm not going to have any money for things I need. He had toyed with the idea of starting community college in the new year, but is now thinking he'll start next fall, to give himself another 8 months to save up. He knows he doesn't want to work at Amazon forever. Even though this job does give me the money I need, it's not enough for what I want, for what I save for myself, for what I want for myself. So I have to put myself through college. The short-term benefits of a high hourly wage versus the long-term benefits of a degree. A dramatic drop in college enrollment could spell trouble for those Americans who are opting out, as well as for their families. Research has long shown that getting even some post-secondary education leads to higher wages, lower unemployment, and greater lifetime earnings. In one study from Georgetown University, bachelor's degree holders were found to earn a median of $2.8 million during their career, 75% more than if they had only a high school diploma. It may be great that people are finding jobs in the short term, says researcher Delaney Britton, but an 18-year-old who is living at home and helping his family with the minimum wage that he's earning, if he's still earning that wage 15 years from now and has a family of his own to support, what are the implications in terms of socioeconomic mobility for that individual, for their children? Britton, who studies the economics of higher education at the University of California, Berkeley, says a host of other benefits have been linked with higher education, including an increased likelihood of civic participation, lower infant mortality rates, better maternal health, and a decreased likelihood of being unhoused or experiencing food insecurity, among other things. LA Johnson/NPR. Many of those social benefits stem from a lifetime of higher wages and increased financial stability, long-term payoffs that can be hard to prioritize over short-term wins, like having a little more money right now. At the end of the day, the wages that you're getting today are one thing, but in 10 years from now they might be really similar, Britton explains. There may not be the growth that you would expect when people get post-secondary education. But Britton also understands that it can be hard to make decisions about your future needs when you're also trying to meet the needs of today. People are in hard economic situations, she says. The pandemic recovery has been extremely uneven. On top of that, the challenges that existed before the pandemic for low-income students, students of color, and students who are the first in their families to go to college, those challenges haven't gone anywhere. #. At the end of the day, the wages that you're getting today are one thing, but in 10 years from now they might be really similar. There may not be the growth that you would expect when people get post-secondary education. To Lady Britton, University of California, Berkeley. Community colleges are the schools that traditionally enroll lower-income students, Shapiro says, so we can assume that that's primarily who is affected and still staying away the most. When the National Student Clearinghouse looked at 2020 high school graduates, it found students from lower-income schools had lower college-going numbers, as did students at high-minority high schools. The gap in college access between higher-income and lower-income students grew wider, Shapiro says. The U.S. economy feels the long-term effects of fewer college graduates. When fewer people go to college, fewer people graduate with the skills, credentials, and degrees necessary for a higher-paying job, and that reverberates throughout the entire U.S. economy. The direct loss to the economy is the workers themselves, explains Tony Carnevale, the director of Georgetown University's Center on Education and the Workforce. If they were trained and ready, they would get higher wage jobs, and they would add more to GDP, making us all richer and increasing taxes, reducing welfare costs, crime costs, on and on. When workers make higher wages, their local economies also benefit. Carnevale explains it this way: when you hire the crane operator goes and buys groceries. So the grocery clerk has a job. More and more jobs in the U.S. require some post-secondary training, Carnevale says, which makes college graduates far more valuable to the economy. Life kit finding your way to a high-paying trade job. Before the pandemic, the country already had a skills gap, with jobs sitting empty because businesses couldn't find workers with the proper credentials. In the past decade, community colleges have worked to close that gap, partnering with local businesses to pair training with employer needs. But according to Carnevale, declining enrollment rates at community colleges mean that gap is going to grow, which, in turn, hurts business. You can't run your business if you literally cannot find people to work in that business, says Britton of the University of California, Berkeley. And when businesses struggle, she says, that has implications for things like decreases in tax revenues, higher prices for goods and services, delays in the production of services and goods like we've seen during the pandemic. And many of those things will only get worse if there are fewer people to fill the jobs. Declines in college enrollment have a compounded impact on the economy because there are economic consequences on so many levels: the individual, the community, businesses, and society as a whole. I registered trademarks. The longer they stay away from college, life starts to happen and it becomes harder and harder to start thinking about yourself going back into a classroom. Doug Shapiro, National Student Clearinghouse. It's unclear exactly how to address these economic ripple effects. Colleges, for their part, are standing up re-entry programs and creating new incentives to enroll. Valencia College, a community college that serves about 50,000 students in Orlando, Florida, waived application fees, extended deadlines, and allowed returning students to retake classes for free. For any student who failed a course they were forced to take online, it gave them a $500 scholarship to come back and take another class in person when things opened up. Shapiro, of the National Student Clearinghouse, says local communities have the most at stake when someone puts college off because their local economies suffer when workers aren't qualified for the best jobs. He says it's on those communities to make the case that college offerings are worthwhile, and it is important for students to invest in their future employability, in their skills and training. Is he tired of all this bad news? Yes. Does he think these low college-going rates are the new normal? It's a frightening thought. I sure hope not. But I guess we'll see. Read and listen. Home. News. Arts and life. Music. Podcasts and shows. About NPR. Overview. Diversity. Ethics. Finances. Public editor. Corrections. Connect newsletters. Facebook. Twitter. Instagram. Press. Contact and help.
Yeah, this is college is good. And you could earn more money. But if I don't, other things in my life that affect why people are not going to good college. There are a lot of them. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's it for now. I will do the rest of the record. Okay. Wait, how many minutes is this? Yeah, almost a while.